He makes the world smile with a single stroke of his bow. Audiences weep tears of joy as the violins soar, the lights glow, and a waltz begins to swirl through the night air. André Rieu is the king of classical crossover, known for transforming orchestral music into a global spectacle. A man who built a musical empire where elegance meets emotion, where Vienna meets Vegas. To millions, he is joy personified. A charming Dutch maestro in a tailcoat, gliding through concert halls and castles with effortless grace. Behind him, the Johann Strauss Orchestra waltzes like a dream. The world sees a fairy tale. But what if the man who brought joy to the world couldn't find it for himself? What if behind the glimmering smile and sweeping gestures, there was a man crushed by expectations, haunted by his past, and trapped in a world he created but no longer controls? Few know of the time he almost lost everything, not just financially, but spiritually. Few realize that the music that heals others was born from childhood wounds, a father's harsh silence, and a lifetime of emotional restraint. Few ask, what happens to the man who always gives but never receives? This is not the story of André Rieu, the legend. This is the story of the man beneath the tuxedo, and the truth behind it is much darker. André Rieu was born in Maastricht, a quiet Dutch city where music echoed through ancient cathedrals and cobblestone streets. From the moment he opened his eyes, music was everywhere. But it wasn't warm lullabies or joyful melodies. It was structure, discipline, and precision. His father, André Rieu Sr., was a highly respected conductor, a man of rigid standards, perfectionism, and cold authority. He conducted symphonies, not families. At home, silence reigned, and affection was rare. André would later recall how the sound of applause meant more to his father than the sound of his own children laughing. Young André was expected to become a classical musician, not because of love, but because it was the family path. At the age of 5, he began learning the violin. It wasn't playful, it wasn't fun, it was serious work under a stern gaze. He was a boy holding an instrument that was supposed to define his life before he even had a chance to define himself. There were no stories of rebellion, no moments of joy in learning. What there was pressure, a quiet, intense pressure that shaped a child into a vessel for someone else's dream. But something unexpected happened. While others saw the violin as an elite, untouchable tool, André saw something else. In the brief moments he played alone, outside his father's scrutiny, he discovered the violin could sing, could cry, could dance. He imagined waltzes, not concertos, smiles, not critiques. And in that secret space, a different kind of musician began to form. He wasn't defiant, he was dreaming. By the time he reached adolescence, that dream became his quiet rebellion, not by shouting, but by gently twisting the meaning of everything he was taught. He would become a classical musician, yes, but on his own terms. And he would turn the coldness of his upbringing into warmth for others. What he didn't know was how deeply those early scars would stay with him, and how long he would keep trying to earn the applause he never truly received at home. André Rieu didn't storm the world with a breakout hit or a viral performance. His ascent was slow, steady, and quietly revolutionary. After studying at the Conservatorium, Maastricht, and later in Brussels, he immersed himself in classical training, surrounded by rigid expectations and traditions. But even then, André carried a secret ambition to make classical music joyful, even fun. It was an idea that bordered on blasphemy in the eyes of purists. In 1987, he formed the Johann Strauss Orchestra with just 12 musicians. It was modest, even laughable to some. They played waltzes music many saw as outdated, kitschy, reserved for ballrooms and old-world elegance. But André saw something else: connection, energy, a way to break the fourth wall between orchestra and audience. He didn't just conduct, he danced. He didn't hide behind a podium, he told jokes, made eye contact, and made people feel. While traditional concerts were formal and distant, his were immersive, emotional, and theatrical. He turned the concert stage into a living, breathing celebration. Slowly, something remarkable began to happen. The crowds grew, the venues got bigger. People who had never listened to classical music bought tickets. Families came together. People wept openly in the aisles. André Rieu had done the unthinkable. He had made waltz music relevant again. By the mid-92nd, his orchestra expanded, his albums topped charts, and his televised concerts reached millions. He played in palace courtyards, stadiums, and even ancient Roman amphitheaters. He became one of the highest-grossing touring artists in the world, alongside pop icons and rock legends. But behind the grandeur, cracks began to show. The pressure to constantly outdo himself, bigger shows, more countries, longer tours, started to weigh heavily. He smiled on stage, but off stage, exhaustion crept in. The very dream he built was slowly becoming a machine he could no longer stop. André had succeeded beyond imagination, but what no one asked was, at what cost? At the height of his success, André Rieu stood before tens of thousands of fans, surrounded by fireworks, golden violins, and standing ovations. But behind the curtain, the man who brought joy to the world was quietly unraveling. The pressure to maintain his empire became relentless. Each tour had to be bigger, each production more extravagant. The costumes, the castles, the logistics, everything had to be perfect. Night after night, city after city. What was once passion turned into a never-ending performance, and André became both the conductor and the prisoner of his own creation. In 2010, it all collapsed. A tour in Australia had to be cancelled due to a severe health scare. The official statement spoke of a viral infection. But insiders whispered something deeper. André was simply burned out. His body had given up before his mind could admit it. For the first time, the man who never missed a show had to step away. And it wasn't just the tour that suffered. He had sunk over 30 million euros into building custom stage sets, castles on wheels, and transporting a full-size replica of Schönbrunn Palace around the world. It was a grand vision, but financially disastrous. The economic crash hit hard, and the pressure of covering those costs nearly ruined him. André later admitted he came terrifyingly close to bankruptcy. "Everything I built, everything was on the edge of vanishing overnight," he said in an interview, his voice trembling. What was meant to be a gift to the world nearly destroyed the man behind it. He suffered from insomnia, anxiety, and a growing sense of isolation. His tight touring schedule kept him away from his family for months. The audience gave standing ovations, but behind the scenes, André often sat alone in hotel rooms, silent, exhausted, and wondering who he really was when the music stopped. Yet he never showed it. Not on stage. There, he was still the smiling maestro. But away from the lights, his identity fractured. The child who once sought his father's approval was now a man who couldn't stop chasing applause, even when it was killing him. There was no crash, no scandal, no dramatic tabloid fall from grace. And that may be the saddest part of André's story. He kept going, even when his body said stop, even when his spirit screamed for rest. He simply kept playing. Night after night, he walked on stage with that familiar smile, raised his bow, and gave everything he had to the music and to the people who came to feel something. He was the master of joy, but lived in a world that rarely gave him permission to be vulnerable. In private, those closest to him began to notice the toll. His wife, Marjorie, who had been the silent architect behind many of his business decisions, worried. His sons saw less and less of him. André wasn't just losing time, he was slowly losing pieces of himself. In one interview, he confessed, "Sometimes, I finish a concert, go back to my room, and just sit there. No sound, no one. And I wonder, is this happiness? That question lingers. For a man who could make stadiums cry, who redefined classical music, who built an empire on connection and joy, why did he so often feel alone? Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't found in scandal or collapse, but in endurance, in someone who keeps going, even when everything inside is begging them to stop. André Rieu survived the storms, the burnout, the breakdowns. But survival doesn't always mean peace. It just means the show goes on. Today, André Rieu still walks onto grand stages, still smiles beneath the spotlight, and still makes strangers cry with joy. His concerts are more than music. They're emotional rituals, memories in motion, moments of shared humanity. But beyond the spectacle, what has he truly left behind? For some, André Rieu is a romantic relic, a man out of time who turned waltzes into arena events and made classical music accessible again. For others, he's a symbol of joy, of elegance, of emotional generosity in a world that often moves too fast to feel. Yet beneath that legacy lies a more difficult truth, that sometimes the people who bring the most light are also the ones who live with the deepest shadows. His wife once said, "André gives everything to the audience. There's not much left for himself." And maybe that was always the plan. Maybe giving was his only way of healing. Maybe music wasn't just his gift, it was his shield. Fans across the world will remember André Rieu as the man who brought beauty back into their lives, who turned pain into performance, and who built an empire on the foundations of his own longing. But when the bow lowers for the last time, and the stage lights dim, who will be there to applaud the man, not the maestro? We may have adored the show, but did we ever truly see the person behind it?